very good evening, everyone. And thank you very much for joining us this evening on this webinar, but also particularly on Facebook, on our Facebook page of Pathway School Noida, where this event is streaming live. We've had a really fantastic response with over 430 people registering from across India and outside. Amidst the terrible times we're living in, it's a special joy to welcome you to a session like this one. Not just because at Pathways we are committed to inclusion, but because today's event focuses on the uplifting capacities of the human spirit, on how it is possible to experience the world and contribute to it in different ways, and why, as a human race, it is important for us to recognize these and make space in our world for such differences. For us at Pathways Noida, this positive energy is especially important today. I started by referring to the terrible times we are in, and I'd like to begin by sharing with you a very personal tragedy at Pathways. Today, we lost one of our colleagues to COVID, a primary school teacher who's been at Pathways for 6 years. To honor her and all of those many, many other loved ones who so many of you have lost, I'd like us to begin with just a few moments of meditative silence. Thank you. And now moving on to today's event. I hope most of you have seen the beautiful film, The Reason I Jump. In case you have not, or as a reminder, we begin today by sharing about 10 minutes of the film. This will be followed by a very moving interview with 3 of the young people we get to know in the film. They're being interviewed by our faculty member, Arti Khurana, herself the parent of an autistic child. The 3 young people you will listen to are nonverbal communicators. The 2 older ones, Ben and Emma, use a letterboard to communicate in the interview, and their thoughts are stitched together by their parents. The youngest one, Jim, uses a text-to-speech translator. Following this is an interview with Jerry Rothwell, the director of the film, and I would like to acknowledge our gratitude to him for helping us put this event together and for getting permission for you to be able to see the film over this past week. He's being interviewed by Samina Mishra, who is the Film Studies faculty at Pathways Noida. Finally, there is a focus on India, with a panel discussion with the parent of an autistic child, Mr. Ajai Vadakkath, and the Director of Action for Autism, Ms. Mary Barua. Thank you very much, both of you, for agreeing to participate. Moderating the panel is our Head of Additional Learning Support, Nilanjana Bera Das Majumdar. So let us begin now with a few clips from The Reason I Jump.
Amrit picks up on things which people usually do not. That was kind of a revelation. For a very long time, she had so much anger in her, but there was no way that she could tell us about it. She must have had some bullying moments in school. She was wanting to make friends, but others did not know how to be friendly with her. She would scream for hours, and then she would cry, and I would cry, and not knowing what to do. That was the time when she used to really rub the crayon on one particular spot until the paper would tear and there were impressions on her desk. But within that, there was such a strong message for others.
Hi, Joss. Lady is going to turn the fans on. It's like a fan! The fan goes round and round. You're making a fan! Make it spin fast! Make it spin fast! It's going round.
It is going round.
Hold so be tight.
Hi, Joss.
Joss? It's raining.
Good lad, well done.
Hey, good luck.
Joss, we're going to take the sausage and chips back to Bradstow, okay? Come on.
We're at Big School.
We are at Big School.
As soon as I try to speak with someone, my words just vanish. There's a gap between what I'm thinking and what I'm saying.
Oh, we got you 2 milkshakes.
Mummy did get you 2 milkshakes.
It's like a reflex, reacting to what I've just seen in some cases, or to some old memories. As if I'm drowning in a flood of words.
Fruit cover is like a black Hoover.
It's like a...
Right?
It's like a
Fruit
red
cover is
Hoover.
like a black Hoover.
It's like a red Hoover.
It's like a black Hoover.
That was like a black one.
The fruit's cover like a red Hoover.
I think it's like a black Hoover.
Fruit's cover is like a black Hoover.
It is.
The big exception is words or phrases I'm familiar with, like playing a game of catch with a ball.
Bah! Bah! Bah!
The reason I jump turned on its head many of the things that we all think we know about autism, that people with autism don't do emotions, that they have no imaginative intelligence. Naoki couldn't possibly have written it were these things true. And autistic people who can write like Naoki does are in a bit of a double bind. Some people will not believe that they've written the book, or some people believe they have written the book, but therefore can't possibly be properly autistic, only a little bit autistic.
Mine's 10 over here, and I got 3 over here. Move to the other side. Okay, So you're not late. You're totally on time, Ben. That's you. That's it. See you on the ice.
We're waiting for you.
Justina. She taught me how to be a father. The type of love we've got from her just changed your whole perspective of life.
How can you be subject to all this wild, uncensored sensory input and then render that into language? Naoki Higashida sort of achieved the impossible. A kid who could still remember what it's like to be 4 or 5 years old. It's kind of poetry.
Hello. Hi, Ben. Hi, Emma. Hi, Jim. And hello to Bertra, Donna, Peter. We're so happy to have you all here today. It's such a great pleasure and it's an honor to have all of you together. So shall we begin? Shall we engage in a conversation? Yes? Okay. All right. So I'm going to start with Ben and Emma. And my first question to you both is, what does your friendship really mean to you?
Well, I was brought to tears when I heard Ben's response to the question. Ben says, it means the world to me. She has been a constant presence in my life. I know I can count on her.
And Emma said, everything. Having been in my life makes my autism manageable. Friendship is the best tonic.
Yes, I think it is for all of us. And knowing your friendship, knowing how you both support each other, it's really beautiful. So thank you for that, Ben and Emma. Jim, so let's talk about the shooting of the documentary. Tell us, Jim, what is your favorite memory from the shooting of the documentary, The Reason I Jump?
What did you like about filming? What's your favorite bit? Yeah? What's your favorite bit about filming?
Right.
Working on the beach, how was it?
It's beautiful.
The beach was beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Thank you so much for that answer. And I'm going to get back to Ben and Emma. And I want to ask you both, since you both are living independently in your own flats, I want to ask you, how would you define this experience? How does it feel to be living independently?
Ben says it is so empowering to be in an environment to make decisions about what to eat or when to rest or watch TV.
And Emma says, having your own place to call your own is wonderful. My books, my schedule, my choice.
I think it matters so much to all of us, the space, our own space, which we can call our own. Yes, and I would totally agree with that. And while we'll wait for Jim to come back to us, I think we can...
bathroom break, sorry.
Perfectly fine, no worries at all. Ben, do you think the use of the spelling board has empowered you? How would you define this whole experience of finding your own voice and being able to communicate to the world outside?
Where Ben says it has given me, the letterboard has given me a voice to express my wants and needs. I did not have a voice for 17 years, and it was oppressive. Yeah, you imagine hearing things said about you that were not true and being unable to defend yourself. I was miserable.
And Emma adds, communication is essential. It allows me to advocate for myself and others without a voice.
So true. Yes, I wish all of us would know how essential it is in our lives. Yes. Emma, what is that one thing that you would want people around you, the society, to understand when it comes to autism?
Emma said, we aren't going anywhere and we have so much to contribute. Slow down and listen. We can amaze.
We'll ask Ben how he feels about, what he wants society to understand with regards to autism.
Ben says this, he's asked this question a lot, and his response is consistently that we're different, but we're not broken. And he added this morning as we prepare for our church service after this call, he says, God does not make mistakes.
It's getting me a bit emotional because I exactly know what Ben means when he says that. Okay, Jim, can we ask you how school is going for you? How do you feel about going back to school after such a long time?
Do you like being back at school? What do you like about being back at school?
Happy.
Happy with school? Who do you see at school? Happy to do lessons or happy to play?
Happy to lessons.
Oh, you're enjoying lessons.
Happy to play.
Okay, he's loving it.
How he's typing on his
Sure,
device.
Delivery.
So he has a keyboard, but then he also has symbols. And when you type words in, sometimes it guesses what you're going to say and helps complete the sentences, doesn't it? And Jim loves talking about deliveries at the moment because he loves delivery vans. Yeah, like DPD, UPS. Yeah, not UPS today, DPD today.
Jim, did you meet your friends in school? Did you meet your friends?
Seeing your friends at school. Is that nice? Yeah.
Who are your friends there? Can you give us their names?
Who's your best friend? Okay, you can type. Cool. Andrea.
Trey. Okay. All right. Ben, how was your experience at the Sundance Film Festival when the entire world stood up to applaud you and Emma? While we wait for Ben and Emma to give us their responses, Jim, what is your favorite subject at school?
What's your favorite subject at school? What do you like? Art. We know somebody else who likes art, don't we? Amrit's very good at art, isn't she? Yeah.
Jim, did you like the portrait? Did you like your drawing?
Did you like Jim? Amrit's drawing is very good. Did you think it was good? What did you think of it? Great picture. Yeah. We're very pleased to have that, aren't we?
Like UPS.
He doesn't. He's saying he doesn't like UPS deliveries.
Okay. All right.
You prefer DPD today to UPS? Okay. Fine.
Okay. Okay. I think Ben is ready with his answer. Emma, can we hear from you?
Emma said it was absolutely magical. We felt very accepted.
I'd bug you.
And Emma is happy to answer Jim's question about where she'd like to go on a train. She wanted you to know that she would love to take a train ride through India.
I love
Yes, nice place.
Jim, if you want to go on a train ride to India too.
Emma, we would love to have you. We would love to have you here.
Jim, why do you want to go to India?
Okay, Ben.
Yeah. So Ben says of Sundance, it was amazing. A sensory feast. It was great to meet everyone, especially David Mitchell, a best-selling author.
I do hope that someday I'm also able to meet him, the exceptional person that he is. I just had the good fortune to say hello to him while he was still at Sundance, so we had a call on video. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I would like.
He wanted to say why he wanted to go to India. Why did he want to go to India?
Because.
Yeah. What do you want to do in India?
Eating.
Eating what?
Indian food.
Do you like Indian food? Yeah, he loves Indian food.
I know that, Peter, you often take them out for dining and prefer Indian food. Yes. So when you come to India, when you visit us, I'm going to get you some authentic Indian dishes. I want to thank you all for being here and for sparing the time and talking to us. Emma, Ben, Jim, thank you so much. I'm sure the audience will take a lot away from this conversation today. You've opened a different world for everyone, and that is something that we should learn from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aarti, for that wonderful, intimate, and illuminating conversation. It is my pleasure to welcome Jerry Rothwell, the director of The Reason I Jump. Jerry is a British documentary filmmaker who's really acclaimed. He's made some wonderful films, including How to Change the World, about the founders of Greenpeace, Sour Grapes, a film about a wine counterfeiter, Town of Runners, about two girls in an Ethiopian village who aspire to be athletes, and School in the Cloud, about the radical educationist Sugata Mitra. His work has won several awards, including 2 Grierson Awards, a Sundance Special Jury Prize, and also a BAFTA nomination. Welcome, Jerry, and it's lovely to see you again.
Hi,
so
Selena.
Perhaps we can begin the conversation by talking about how you came upon the idea for this film and really what was your intention in making it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the idea from the film really came from Stevie Lee and Jeremy Deere, who are 2 of the producers, alongside Al Murray, who usually produce my films. And Stevie and Jeremy's son Joss is in the film, and they're in the film themselves. They'd come across Naoki's book, I think, when Joss was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I think it had sort of transformed their understanding of their son, as it has done with a lot of parents, I think. And I guess when I first read the book, I was really struck by the way it framed autism as a response to a sensory experience, above all. You know, that a lot of the things we read as sort of behaviors of autistic people are often responses to overwhelm or to different sensory perceptions or different cognitive experience of the world. And Naoki writes this book when he's kind of 12 years old. He's learned to use a letterboard. And I thought, well, I thought initially of a film about Naoki, and I went to meet with him, which was an amazing experience. And during that meeting, he basically said, you know, he didn't want to be in the film. He didn't want the film to be about him. So that sent the film off on a different direction, which is how could we use this text, which is basically answers to 58 questions about autism, written by Naoki, written by a 12-year-old, and use it to explore the lives and experiences of other people around the world.
There are 2 main questions that I'd like you to answer. One is, of course, that how did you pick the characters, you know, in the different parts of the world, and you know, why these particular people. And secondly, you know, the expressionistic style of the film, it allows us to sort of experience their world to some extent. And in some ways, what Ben said in this interview, that we are different, but we're not broken. It allows us to see that there are differences, but there are also so many similarities. So for example, the way that Joss sort of experiences sound, it reminded me of you know, John Cage's 4 minutes 33, and how there are many people who may not be autistic or with special needs who actually experience sound in the same way. So if you could talk a little bit about that, why these characters and this style?
So I mean, I think to a certain extent, one could have made this film about any young autistic person, and I guess with my films, it's much more about, can you build a relationship with people around the filming process than a kind of casting process. But I wanted to make it global, and very early on I came across Amrit's paintings, and I thought that was a really exciting way to take us into a different way of seeing, you know, because I think Amrit's paintings have this incredible sort of detail and vibrancy about them. And they are a different, often kind of the human figure seen in different ways. So I knew that I kind of wanted to start the film with Amrit, and then really other people sort of fell in place according to the needs of the film. So it was really important to show the issue of time and memory, the experience of time and memory, and I felt that we could do that well through Joss, partly because Joss's language often refers to things in his past, and also because we had access to this home movie about him. And Ben and Emma, I was looking for people who communicated in the same way that Naoki did, using a letterboard, so we could see that process, and also maybe people who would take it on a more sort of political spin, an advocacy spin. And then with Justina, I was shooting in Sierra Leone, and I wanted to explore autism in an African context, and also to explore the way sort of societies needed to change, not just the individual. And Mary's work with parents and with setting up the school and really kind of trying to create a support system from nothing in a country where there's a lot of need for different kinds of opportunities for autistic people, felt a good place to put it. So that was the reason behind all of those choices. I think that in terms of the sort of sensory world or the sensory style of the film, yeah, it felt already that since the film was about people for whom words wasn't their primary means of expression, they expressed themselves in lots of other ways, that, you know, a conventional documentary that had kind of a lot of interviews and a lot of telling you what to think and a lot of explanation was not the way to go. It was better to try and sit you alongside those people for a while and help to see the world a bit as they did. And I don't think the film is like a simulation. I don't think it's possible to simulate how other people see the world, but it just kind of tries to take you out of the sort of neurotypical filters we usually place, you know. And as you say, all of us know maybe the experience of like listening to a fan and getting into the rhythm of it. Those are not unfamiliar things. But
everything we hear is music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what were the challenges in filming, and what was the experience for, I mean, did you have a sense of how all of these characters experienced the filming?
I mean, I think we wanted to be very much led by the people that we were filming with. So we didn't go with a very strong plan of like images we wanted, or usually it was a question of like, what might that person be doing on these days and could we accompany them? So I think we came with Amrit to Pathway School for a day, which was great, although much of that material didn't make it into the film, for which I apologies, but we shot an awful lot of stuff. Yeah, and rather than sort of use kind of lots of special effects or something like that, to try and always get our imagery from the world that people were in. So to try and just look at the rooms people were in a slightly different, you know, way. How might we shoot this room in a way that shows its kind of potential intensity for people. So that was more, yeah, our approach was just to try and hang out with people really,
yeah,
with a really small crew, you know. The
images that you have of the fan and the rain, the shadows is really, really stunning actually, you know, and it is an everyday image, but suddenly it's transformed into something else.
Yeah, we had a really talented director of photography, young man, Ruben Woodin-Deschamps, whose kind of experience was less in documentary and more in kind of music videos and drama, but I think brought to it a way of seeing, you know, which is why I chose him to work with.
And how did these people all react to the crew and, you know, what it takes to make a film with boom,
yeah,
boom,
I mean, well, we tried to keep it small. There was only like me, Ruben, the sound recorder, Sarah, and then a camera assistant who was usually kind of in another room. So we tried to keep it very low impact. We shot with quite a small camera. So hopefully it wasn't too disruptive. Although I think if you probably talk to them, they would say, yes, you know, suddenly there's all these people hanging around my house for a few days. But yeah, it was hopefully fairly low impact.
And have they seen the film, and what has been their response?
Yeah, I think everyone's seen it. I mean, we sort of sent it around as a rough cut, and then I think everyone's seen the final film now. Hopefully, yeah, I think everyone seems happy with it, which is great. You know, there's a few things you know, I always show films at a rough cut stage to the people that are in it, because I kind of think it's unfair to sort of spend a lot of time with someone making a film and then, you know, the first time they see it is with 100 other people in a cinema or something. And then you often get in a kind of dialogue about, you know, what's in it and is it true and how's it going to affect your life, that being out there in public. So yeah, there's a sort of dialogue around that.
So did you make any changes based on these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, they were kind of, you know, particularly around, say, the Sierra Leone sequences where, you know, there was a danger of making Mary's organization kind of vulnerable to certain kinds of criticism because of the things that were said and the things that we filmed. So there were, yeah, we kind of pulled back in a way on some of that stuff.
I was curious if maybe, might be, I think others may also be curious, although David Mitchell does talk about this in the film, and he says that people will either think that he didn't write the book, Naoki Higashida didn't write the book, or that he's not autistic. So I was wondering based on your interactions with him, what did you learn of the process? Because it's really quite amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that in the 90s, there was a technique called facilitated communication where people sort of supported people's arm to point to a letterboard as a way of kind of helping them regulate the kind of sort of sensory issues of pointing. Mm-hmm. When that was studied, and particularly because it came into a lot of legal cases around abuse, it was shown that a lot of that communication was primarily from the facilitator and not from the person themselves. And Naoki doesn't use that method. He types completely independently at a computer, or else he uses a letterboard, which he prefers. And although some people still use that method in order to learn, I think what happened in the 90s was that the whole idea that autistic people who don't use language don't have language and don't think linguistically, that assumption was made, and as a result, people are treated as much more stupid than they are, or much less capable than they are. And I think the advent of things like iPads and other forms of communication has really kind of opened up that field now. When I went to see Naoki, I partly went because I wanted to rule out, I didn't want to be making a film about a book by someone who wasn't the author of the book. So I wanted in myself to know that that wasn't the case. And yeah, he uses the letterboard completely independently. And his answers to me were as kind of wise as poetic as the book is, And there was one point, I think, in the interview, he would, like a lot of autistic people, he was often very distracted by things. He would get up and look out the window and come back and sit down and then add another few words and then get up and get distracted into something else and then come back to the question. So an answer took a long time. But I asked him at one point, what is it that draws you to the window all the time? And he said, I like to look at the car wheels, right? I like to look at the car wheels. And I said, why do you look at car wheels? And he pointed out they are like galaxies rotating, which I thought was like just a fantastically sort of poetic answer about the everyday and about that kind of the sight of something spinning.
Yeah, your film captures that poetry in the everyday. As a final question, as a documentary filmmaker, you have traveled all over. You have worked with so many kinds of people, different people across cultures. So this idea of the other, you're constantly, in a way, grappling with it, and the absurdity in some ways of the idea of the other. So making The Reason I Jump, was it in any way different from making any other film where you are putting yourself in a different context from your own? Or was it just another film?
I think it brings those things into greater highlight when you're doing it. And all documentary making, or most documentary making, especially if, like me, you're a kind of white middle-class bloke in a Northern European country, is a huge presumption, to be kind of representing the lives of others. Morally really a fraught thing to do. And I think all you can do is kind of try and do it, as well as possible in terms of the way you kind of listen and the process you put around that and how consultative it is with people. But I think it's Jean Rouch, it's a French documentary maker, said, as soon as you turn on a camera, privacy is violated. And I think that's true, it is a fraught thing, filming stuff and then presenting it to an audience and saying that it's real. That's like in a way fiction manages to evade a lot of those ethical issues. So, and in this case, I think, because a lot of the people we were shooting with are non-verbal and have other ways of communicating, that sort of highlights that issue even more, I think. I mean, and just hope, I guess it stands or falls by does the documentary feel true to them, and I hopefully it does.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jerry, for taking the time out for this conversation, and I think most importantly for making the film. and for bringing the poetry of the everyday, the imaginative world that we can all inhabit, which is probably the thing that can actually help us connect with each other and make the other the self. So thank you very, very much. And pleasure now to hand over to Nilanjana Bera Das Majumdar. Thank you.
Thanks, Samina. Lovely to talk to you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. It is our pleasure to welcome you all to our panel discussion on neurodiversity and autism. Our session will cover early identification, intervention, and support structure in India related to autism from parents who has experienced it firsthand. We'll hear about the best support and planning that can be provided to children on spectrum by experienced personnel who has been the autism warriors of India. Let's welcome our esteemed guests, Ms. Mary Barua and Mr. Ajai Vadakkath. While we engage in an insightful discussion with them, please post your questions in the Zoom chat or the comment section of the Facebook. We'll take up as many questions as time allows us at the end of the conversation. Without further ado, let me introduce our guests. Ms. Mary Barua, Director of Action for Autism, New Delhi, India. Her passionate battle to increase people's knowledge of autism, something that has affected her own son, has today become a national movement. In addition to raising awareness, her movement convinced the Indian government to include autism in the Rights of Persons with Disability Act 1999. Her organization, Action for Autism, builds systematic support, understanding, and training for the children affected, their parents, and educators. I set to create a model that could be replicated. Today, there are at least 50 schools for the autistic in India. That's what she says and believes in. Finally, the real challenge. What happens to these children once they are adults and their parents are no more? In 2011, AFA started Ananda, a residence-cum rehabilitation complex for persons with autism. Now, I'll come to Commander Ajai Vadakkath. Commander Ajai Vadakkath and his wife Preeti are parents of Siddharth, a wonderful 19-year-old on autism spectrum. They have been involved with the visual arts for over 20 years. And with their experience, they are working to help children with special needs. And parents navigate the contemporary visual art space in our country, trying to bridge the gap between the mainstream and the marginalized. He believes that the artistic expression of persons with developmental delays or differences are equally valid and authentic, and supports the venture that pushes the envelope and expands the space for such people in Indian contemporary art. Now I'll come to Miss Mary. Ma'am, with your huge experience, can you shed light on a few questions like, what is the current situation of autism in India? Where should parents go to get support, training, and facilities?
All right. Thank you so much for having me here. And I feel a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit presumptuous to be speaking after Ben and Emma and Jim, and listening to Jerry Rothwell. You know, it was really moving listening to even Jerry describe how he made the film, because the film itself, I mean, the book was amazing, and the film itself, the flow of the film, it's almost like you're experiencing what the young people are experiencing. So anyway, having said that, so what is the situation for people with autism in India, and where should parents, what should parents do? Okay, so, you know, I think one of the things is that when individuals families get a diagnosis of autism, one of the things that happens is that there is a lot of stigma attached to it. And since most parents subscribe to, you know, what society around them are saying, so they also have those beliefs, not because they're bad people, but because that's society telling them all around them.
And they have to remember, like Ben said, that we are different, we are not broken. And I think that is something that parents really have to keep in mind. And when they go looking for services, what they have to really look for are places that would help their child enjoy the process of learning, that would help their child enjoy wanting to listen to this adult who's telling me what to do, right? And that is what is most important, and not that they have to sit down and learn and comply, which is really where we are currently. And in fact, I love that bit that Jerry said about now key not sitting in one place but moving around. And that is the reality. That is how a lot of autistic kids learn better. And we really have to get to that place. So when parents are looking for a place to go to, they have to look for a place that helps them understand their child, that helps them understand the rationale of what that place will be doing with their child. And the other thing that I would say is they have to look at a place that does not work behind closed doors, because our kids are very vulnerable, and they often face a lot of abuse. And any place they go to, any professional they go to, has to be a place that is not insisting that what they do is behind locked doors and parents can't see what is happening. And finally, a place that gives people with autism agency and choice, so that they also are able to exercise their agency and not have to constantly do what they are being told to do. It has to be a kind of two-way affair. So I think with that, I'll quickly stop. I think I'm taking too much time.
No, ma'am. It's very important to have these information for parents. Now, from here only, I'll take the question towards how are in this process, how are the special schools working towards training their children for mainstreaming or making them independent to function like independently?
See, again, special needs schools, they are not, in our country, we don't have any credentialing authority. I mean, Rehabilitation Council of India is there, but it really is there and is not there. So a special school would be doing whatever it thinks it wants to do, or whatever it thinks is the right way, but we don't really have any set, curricula that they have to follow and stuff like that. But if the school is a really good place, then they would really work towards helping children, especially the very young child, with the tools that they would need to be able to function in this very overwhelming world, right? And so help them learn the skills that they would need to go to school, but learn it through a process of enjoyment, right? So that is what schools have to do. And they have to also, I think, work with mainstream schools where we want our children to eventually go, and help the mainstream schools understand that there has to be a certain, because all mainstream schools may not know what they should do with autistic kids and how they can help them learn, and to help them see that they have to make accommodations for the students with autism exactly the way they would do with a kid who is deaf or who's blind or who has a mobility impairment and uses a wheelchair. So there has to be accommodations provided for autistic students, which would mean things like making sure that they have schedules, making sure that their instructions are visual, making sure that the communication is not opaque, that communication is clear. So, things like that. So it'll have to be a kind of partnership. So while we're working with the child, we cannot say, and this is what often happens, that the autistic kid must change and become normal. They have to stop being autistic. They shouldn't have these behaviors. They should not have those sensory needs. We cannot do that. We help the child to learn, and we help to change the environment so that the child has the best possible way of learning.
That's greatly narrated, from being trainable to educable, that brings the child to mainstream. So I would again go back to the first question that I asked you about being independent. Would you like to talk a bit about Anando?
Okay. So before I go to that, I just have to say one more thing, which I forgot to mention, is that, there has to be acceptance. This is Autism Awareness Month, but I think awareness is done with. It's done to death. And awareness alone does nothing really if there is no acceptance. And there has to be acceptance. We want society to accept our children, but there has to be acceptance from schools, of course, and from parents. And I'm saying that as a parent. If I can't accept my child, I can't expect society to accept. So there has to be autism acceptance. So talking about Ananda, I was listening to Jim, Ben and Emma. They live independently. They have their independent space. Those are really dreams in India. We still have very, very long way to go for something like that, right? In India, most people cannot imagine that somebody who's not a non-speaking autistic person is living independently, right? So that is, perhaps we will get there in 10 years' time, I don't know. So the second best thing is for what we set up currently, like assisted living centers, where you don't have your own apartment where you're living, but you're living with another maybe 8 or 10 people. You're sharing a space. And that is what Ananda is like. It's really a home. We run it like a large joint family, which is something that Indians are pretty familiar with. And where we currently have 10 adults living there, along with, I think, 8 assists, we call them, and they all live together. They have their bedrooms right next to each other. So we don't have this thing that, those autistic kids live here and we, the non-autistic, live there. They all live together, right? Because it has to be, there is interdependence, which is really most important. And they lead, everyday lives. They go to work. We have a place away from the home where they go to work every day. And, like everybody else, they go to work in the morning, they come back, and then they have their helping chores around the place. So we try to have it, and without the pandemic, we would go out into the community, go for movies, go to restaurants. Just before the second wave came, they made a trip to Jaipur. Everybody went to Jaipur for a 3-day holiday, like families do. That's what we wanted. It has to be like a family. So that's what Ananda is all about. We are still finding our way. There is no one template we have in India. We don't have the social security net that most other countries provide. So just like, I think Ajai is also working towards that, trying to find that path. We are working towards that. And I think ultimately we'll have to share our ideas and kind of decide. And my son has moved to Ananda. He loves it because right now this place is Mary's home and that is his home. And he likes being there. So when he visits for a couple of days and then he says he wants to go back. And he's, of course, he's speaking, but he's marginally speaking, right? And, but of course, I know that he can communicate and he does communicate. So, well, that's what Ananda is about.
Thank you, ma'am. That's really insightful and very, it gives a lot of relief to the parents who think what is going to happen. That's really important piece of information. I'll take Mary ma'am's, what she said, interdependence, and I'll come to Ajay sir now, saying, I remember a conversation with Ajay sir where he did mention about something about Leela Watson, what she said, that how autistic children in spectrum, they are trying to make a journey towards the regular ones. And he just said, why can't the regular ones with all the faculties in place can travel a little faster towards this world and embrace them all? Sir, I'd like to come to you and please take us through your journey of being a parent, the support that you got in India, and then what type of support have you received? And then what was your journey like, and any advice for the parents, sir?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. My journey is 19 years, so I'll just try and cut it short. But the fact is, luckily for me, I got support at every stage in my life. The only problem was diagnosis. When Siddharth was 10 months old, we realized he was not listening to us. He was not responding to our voice, what we're talking. And we took him to a pediatrician. The pediatrician took us to an audiologist. The audiologist said, hey, okay. So we came back. And again, at 1.5 years, we again took him to a pediatrician, told him that, we have a problem, and it may be something more deeper than this. He said, okay, I'll check once more. And when he was 1.5, again we went to an audiologist, and again we came back, and they said everything is fine. Now, see, I grew up in a house full of books. So my father had a book in his cupboard called Abnormal Psychology and Human Behavior. This is like 30, 40 years back. So I knew about autism before I met Siddharth. So I just thought that, I need to get this thing checked. So again, I went back to the pediatrician, and then when he was close to 2 years, I told him, see, we need to do something about it. Maybe it is autism. Then he took that whole cliche about overprotective parent and this and that and everything. But he did allow me, gave me a prescription and said, okay, you go to CMC Vellore and get it, get the diagnosis. We went there. Doctors are very kind people. They don't want to hurt your feelings from the get-go, and that you tear your hair off, which for me it's an easy thing to do, whatever is left. But so then they said he's got developmental communication dysfunction. That is the word. Still, the Vellore thing is developmental communication dysfunction. And later on, what people call high needs autism, so from developmental communication dysfunction, and today he uses the iPad. He's got hundreds and thousands of pictures. Wherever we go, we take pictures, short videos. So when he wants to talk about some relative of ours or something, he picks up that video and shows it to us. So there is a lot of communication, but he is non-verbal. But I think we are having a really fun time now because of these kind of things opening up. And it is not that he's using some, some app or anything. He's just using the Google, which arranges all the photographs in a particular Google Photos, which arranges the photograph very nicely. We add some additional folders for him, and then he goes about communicating. I had a lot of help from my parent body, the Armed Forces, the Navy, because as soon as I got the diagnosis, I was in Vizag. I asked for a transfer to Cochin. I immediately got a transfer to Cochin because I was told they need family. They need family around them. That's what will get them out of their autism or whatever. So I quickly went to Cochin. Within 6 months, I realized that's not going to, cut the mustard. So I again asked for a transfer to Bangalore because Bangalore had a lot of helpful centers there. And Bangalore had a lot of giant ladies who were really helpful, really supported us. Mrs. Matthias, Jayashree, Suchitra Somashekar, so many of them, they just embraced us, young parents. So I feel as a parent, my duty, or my obligation is to help pay it forward to people who need this help. And, I think that's the, bare minimum you can do as a parent.
So what I would like to also come to you for again, that we were talking about this, that who are the stakeholders whom you have gone for identification when you were worried that something is there and you need to identify? Which are the stakeholders, like the pediatrician you said? What kind of pediatrician? Yes.
Yeah, first was a normal pediatrician. I feel in India, you should give this full job of identifying to the audiologist, because most parents take their children telling that he cannot hear clearly or because he's not responding. So if you have the audiologist ticking a few boxes, I think that will give the job much easier. But what we had is, we went to Vellore because it had a developmental pediatrician, a person significantly more qualified to assess, evaluate. They did a whole bunch of tests. They did sleep tests, and they did his responses to stimuli or whatever, very scientific tests. It was, I think, a 6 or 7 day kind of a testing, more than my SSB, I can tell you that. And finally, they gave, but they were also, like I said, they're kind-hearted people. They did not give a full, because he's only 2 years. He's short of 2 years. So nobody can give such a large word like autism onto a small child like him. So they gave him an even larger word called developmental communication dysfunction. And anyway, that's the long and short of it. But they were accurate, because at that time, even I would have not, understood autism and, what I could do, take it forward. So they said, work on his strengths, his skills, and a few tips were taken. Then we went to NIMHANS and got a proper diagnosis because it was required for certification in those days. Actually, I think between Mary and me and today, there is like 20 years maybe. So we are all talking in time capsules.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was really helpful. And we have a lot of information. We go to the questions that we have received in our chat. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to share something. It slipped my mind. I just wanted to also say, I mean, considering that you were talking about the reason I jumped, one of the things that's very important for parents to understand is that most parents in India are very resistant to using AACs with their children. For non-speaking kids, when we introduce AACs for them to help them develop their communication, most parents are extremely reluctant. They feel that if you use an assisted and augmentative mode of communication, the child will never speak. So that is, I think, a very, very important thing that they have to keep in mind. And finally, the exciting thing is that in India, we finally have a nascent self-advocacy movement happening. There are a whole bunch of smart, intelligent, autistic individuals who are now holding conferences and trainings and taking the movement forward. And this is something that I dreamt of 40 years back. And it is truly, truly exciting that it took a long time, but it has now begun to happen. Just wanted to quickly share this.
That's a huge thing. That's a huge, huge thing that has happened. We have our questions in the chat. Ms. Aarti. Let's have Ms.
Hi, Ajay. We have a couple of questions for both you and Mary, but I want to begin by posing a question to you, Ajay. Thank you for sharing your journey as a parent, but as a parent myself, I want to understand, since you and Preeti both are passionate artists yourselves and very accomplished, I want to understand, how do you see the world of art? Do you really see the world of art embracing our children and their talent, not because they're autistic, but because they are artists?
I completely believe in that. I would not be sitting here if I did not believe in that. We have a small movement on WhatsApp with a whole bunch of parents of children with autism and other disabilities, trisomy 21, everything. I believe, see, like Amrit's work is no different. Her language is her own, and her figurative drawings are no different than a Jamini Roy or a Jogen Chaudhary or a Tota Vaigundam. I'm convinced it is that. So I have, her figurative work is her own work. I have seen some other artists like Swami, their work are so individualistic and so powerful. And let me tell you, when I saw the movie, I was reminded of Joss was doing that red scribbling he was doing. Now, Siddharth does a lot of red scribbling, but this is not about Siddharth. Now, there is an artist called Rashid Johnson. He's an American artist who has got a painting called Anxious Red. And it is a lot of scribbles with red, a lot of scribbles. It's a huge painting, maybe 8 feet by 12 feet or something like that. A lot of scribbles with red. Now, when I was seeing the video, and I realized that what Rashid Johnson was doing was trying to express anxiousness through his drawing. What Joss was doing was showing calmness through his drawing. This is what calms him down. And I found that, that even though it is dichotomous, I think it is also connected. And we need to support artists from the spectrum, from trisomy 21. All the artists have to come together. We need parents, we need support groups. Like I keep telling, we need to burst them out of the special needs orbit and into the mainstream orbit. And inshallah, in a few years' time, it will happen. I am quite confident of that. It takes time. We have to look at the long game. We can't look at the short game and say, like there are parents who 16-year-old, 15-year-old, they think, I want to be an artist tomorrow. I want to present at the galleries tomorrow. That is not the game. I can tell you from personal experience, my brother who is 55, he became known only when he was 40. But that does not mean for 20 years he was not working. He was working. He was doing his practice for 20 years. When you have a tree, 5 hours to cut a tree, you spend 4 hours sharpening your axe. So we are all sharpening our axes now. Now, when the tree is ready to be cut, we will cut it down.
Thank you so much for that, Ajay. And my next question is to you, Mary. And this is coming from our audience. So the question is, do you think that the experiences of children with autism can actually teach mainstream schools to create an environment that benefits all children? Because all children need the space to perceive in different ways.
Absolutely. First of all, everything that we know as an organization has changed dramatically ever since we started listening to autistic voices. I mean, when we started 25 years back, or close to 30 years ago, we thought we had acceptance and we understood things in one way. But as we met more people with autism, listened to their voices, everything that we do change. And the reality is that if our schools are made open to including people with autism, you would be able to include most people simply because the autistic mind thinks in a different way. They experience the world in a completely different way. People with other disabilities or otherness, their minds think the same way, right? But the autistic mind experiences the world differently. So if we could make our teaching inclusive of the autistic kid, you can include anybody else really.
Yeah, I got one point here. See, when look at ourselves. When I was growing up, I had one child with trisomy and two of my classmates. This girl was junior to me, trisomy 21, and two of my classmates who were considered different. Today, when I look back, they had autism. Now, my problem was I did not engage with them. I was not told to engage with them. I was taught to leave them where they were. I was taught to be insular. That is the problem today. I think inclusion, like we mentioned with Nilanjana before, is that, if you have come to help me, then I don't need you here, like Lila Watson said. But if you have come because your destiny is bound up with mine, then come, let us work together. So I want the mainstream to move faster because they have the faculty to move faster. They have the facilities to move faster than meet us.
Thank you so much for that, Ajay. Mary, there is another question for you. And this is that there's a 20-year-old boy who's on the spectrum and has found his passion in cooking. In these COVID times, is there a possibility to find him a mentor who could help him? He lives in Narayana, Delhi.
It'll have to be an online mentor because currently, I don't know when, I don't see anybody moving out before another year. I've been saying since last year that this is going to last 2 or 3 years. So it seems to be going that way. But what he can do, I immediately thought of this other 20-year-old boy I know who's cooking. Quite a few of our young people have started cooking, right? And what they do is they check out YouTube videos. And that is something that he could perhaps explore because, in whether you get a mentor or whether you do it from YouTube, it'll have to be online. And some of the YouTube videos, the teaching videos are really good. So maybe that is something that could be explored. And I don't think I have any other thoughts really.
Yes, I think, yeah, we've seen a lot of our youngsters really embracing different kinds of passions during the lockdown.
It's like Ajay was saying, painting, cooking, craft work, they've just started blossoming with, going on the internet.
No, it's also, let me tell you one more thing. The reason is the parents have more time to spend at home with the children.
Yeah, and also, the other thing that we found is that when this whole thing happened, we initially thought as we were moving online, that we wonder how this will work out. I think, it's kind of a distraction-free screen. And we've been amazed at how well kids have adapted to learning from the screen. Autistic kids at least. They're doing really, really well because it's somehow, I think it brings the whole focus there and there is no distraction, class and other people around. I don't know what it is, but seems like that's it.
Maybe the setting, because there is a lack of change, the best part of it, that they want to be in the comfortable situation, that increases the productivity with children with spectrum, probably that is really helpful for them. The home environment is going in favor with children on spectrum, I believe, if you agree.
And Mary, this is the last question to you. What are the methods to work on towards social security for autistic children in India?
That's a tough one, because social security, whether you have autism or you don't have autism, you know, if you're economically disadvantaged, there's no social security. So in our country, social security is, but I would say that it would be a good idea, and I'm speaking from my age and, you know, knowing that there are things I could have done which I haven't done. I think it's a good idea for parents to start planning when they're young, you know, just like with our neurotypical children, we plan their education and we plan their future life. Somehow with kids with autism, we don't think of that. We just think, when I'm not there, what will happen to them? But I think we have to start planning, just like we do with our regular kids. If I'm going to send my kid abroad to study, I put money aside for him. I have to do the same thing for my autistic kid. And who knows, he may also go abroad and study. I don't know. See, with our kids, we don't know how they will surprise us in time to come. So I think we should plan for autistic kids exactly the way we do for our neurotypical. And the other thing I would say is write a will, create a trust. And if you don't need it later, great. But if you need it, you're prepared for it. But start planning as soon as you can. Not planning ki uska shadi hoga ya nahi. That's the question most parents ask me, and I can't figure out why the hell they ask us that. Especially when many of them are very unhappily married, right? Shadi hoga ya nahi. I think that's the least of it. I think we're going to start, do some financial planning. What do you know? Your kid might, so many of the parents have been surprised by the fact that the kids are going to college. They hadn't really thought that they would do it, and they are doing it. So in times to come, you don't know how it will go. Plan for the future, plan your finances, and our kids will surprise us in the most amazing ways.
Thank you so much for that, Mary. Thank you so much, Ajay. Over to you now.
We'd like to have Dr. Advani joining us for our panel discussion now, ma'am, if we may have you now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you, of course. It struck me that a lot of responses to difference and a lot of preconceptions and prejudices that we have are really based on ignorance. And in India, we have for a long time invisibilized autism. It's been wonderful to hear about the move forward, Mary, that you were talking about. But I'll still say that by and large, it is invisibilized. And this is something that is colluded in with parents who sort of tuck autistic children away without the belief that there is something that they can take ahead and allow to flower. Films like The Reason I Jump, with all its poetry and sensitivity in the way it unfolds, and the various conversations we've had this evening, I hope will open up and expand the conversations on this and promote the kind of acceptance that we've been talking about. I know that having Amrit in school has been such a powerful learning for our children. When Aarti talked about having her come into school and do art and be around and be part of the school community, she thought that this was something wonderful that the school was doing in enabling. But that is not true. This is something that the entire school community has got so much from Amrit. So much enablement, so much recognition of different vocabularies. And this is what education really should be about. So for this evening, I really want to thank everyone involved. I want to thank our entire back-end team who've put this online event together. You know who you are. I'd like to thank our faculty members who helped in shaping the conversation. Thank you to Jim and Ben and Emma, and to your parents. Thank you very much, Ajay and Mary, and thank you to Jerry for creating this very memorable gathering of all of us. Thank you all very much.